Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, and today we are going to be doing a video of some reflections I've made on job searching and also software engineering self-improvement that I've been doing during my job search. So I've made a PowerPoint this video just to kind of visualize this and make it more audience friendly. So first, I'd like to go over some of the failures that I've had. Um, and the first thing that I want to talk about are my projects not being high enough quality. So the reason that I knew that my projects weren't high enough quality, particularly one project that I had worked on for my capstone at WGU, which is the university I went to, Western Governors, um, I had feedback from an interview, and it was a small startup company, and they were interviewing for their first junior developer position. And he had me go through my project with him. It was actually my first interview where I was demonstrating my project, right? Because with software engineering, if you don't know already, there's all these different types of interviews, and you have to be prepared for all of them, whether it's an interview, a technical interview doing whiteboard problems, or a technical interview just demonstrating your project, or a take-home project, or a coding session live in front of them, or just theory questions. There's literally so many different types of interviews that you could potentially go through as an aspiring software engineer. So the reason that I bring up my projects weren't high enough quality, because this is very, very important, right? Even if you're not doing a project demonstration in your technical interview, they're still most likely going to ask you about your projects. I think in actually all of the interviews I've had, they've asked me about my projects and kind of had me elaborate on more technical details of them. So here are some things that were wrong with my projects. The user experience was not intuitive. It was kind of complicated, not easy to use, not straightforward. There were some small bugs, very minor, that I didn't notice, and also just not enough features, right? So uh, my project, my capstone project, it had a couple features, right? It had some graphs that displayed some, business insights based off of the data that was stored in the database, and it was basically just a web app made with Django that featured CRUD functionality. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, it's create, read, update, delete, CRUD. And it was just kind of simple. It wasn't like anything impressive. And the feedback that he gave me is, hey, you should be implementing some sort of REST API, or caching, or something to like really beef up your project, because the CRUD, he said, is the baseline expectation for the project, right? So your project, it needs to have the database, it needs to have those create, read, update, delete operations on whatever model classes that you have that you're using for your project, depending on what it is, right? Basic user authentication, that sort of thing. That's all basic expectations, and most likely, just having that basic application is not going to get you a job. And for those of you, quick note for those of you who are at WGU, a regret that I had was making my capstone project a new project. I made it a Python project. My language specialization for my major was Java. I should have just improved the current or improved the old Java project that I had from Software 2. If you're currently in the program, I would recommend doing that, because basically, for those of you who don't go to WGU, basically we had this class called Software 2, and computer science programs at different universities probably have something similar, where you create a CRUD application, a basic application, whether it's a web app or a standalone Java app or whatever it is, right? With a database and then some basic functionality. What I would recommend doing is going in and thinking of some creative ideas of how you're going to make yourself stand out and improve that project. All right, so enough on that point. Let's go ahead and talk about no experience to make myself stand out. So, I didn't. This is in the beginning. I do have experience now, but this is in the beginning of my job search. I didn't have an internship, and I didn't have anything in my experience section other than outside of the industry experience. When I was working as a restaurant manager, and if that's the first thing in your experience, some job, some blue collar job. I'm not dissing on that, by the way. I was a restaurant manager for 5 years, and it's hard work, and the soft skills do translate. It's good. You want to have that on your resume, yes. But my point is that for the first thing on your resume, it's not exactly like appealing, or at least it doesn't really help you to stand out. So I would recommend really going hard on seeking an internship, whether or not it's unpaid or something that you can put in your experience that's software. That's software development where you're actually doing something, you're contributing on a team of software developers or making some kind of software, doing something that's relevant to the jobs that you're applying for. Definitely put that on the top of your resume. It's going to help you, it's going to make you stand out. As soon as I got my internship, I put it on my resume, even though I was like a week in, right? I wanted to have something that would make me stand out. And I instantly started getting more invitations to interviews. So definitely that is your number one priority if you're on a job hunt and you don't have the relevant experience. Okay, and overcrowded resume. That was one of the failures that I did, was having an overcrowded resume and using that resume for way too long. And another point that I want to make that's connected to the overcrowded resume is just keeping the same resume and not updating it for a long time. That's something that I did. I want to update it for weeks at a time. Guys, you should be constantly improving your skills and adding stuff to your resume, whether that's projects or experience achievements that you've made at your current position, or projects that you've made. You have to keep updating your resume, proofreading it, showing it to other people, even non-technical people like members of your family or your friends. Show it to them, get a second glance. They can look at small grammar errors or small things that look bad or aesthetic issues or inconsistencies. You want to get a second opinion on that resume. You want to make sure that it's not overcrowded. I still believe in substance over style. So make sure that you have the right stuff on your resume and you have enough of the right stuff, but don't make it overcrowded. Nobody wants to see that. I talked with a recruiter who used to work at Meta. She got laid off during all the layoffs that happened, but that's beside the point, right? What she said is that she's not gonna read through the entire resume. She's not gonna start at the top and then work her way down reading the entire thing. They have hundreds of resumes to go through. So she's looking for keywords, bullet points. She's just gonna go, if the summary is a couple sentences long, she might read that. So make the summary at the top of your resume as short as possible. And then you want to have single line bullet points in your resume highlighting your accomplishments, not your responsibilities. And yes, you do want to, if you don't have many accomplishments, you do want to have, like, what you were doing at the job. You want to make that obvious, right, in your resume, but make it a one line. Don't make it multiple lines. That was a mistake that I had. They're not going to read that. You want to make sure that it's something that is like quick and easy to read for somebody who is glancing over the resume. Try to put yourself in the recruiter's shoes, and that might help you actually with creating your resume. All right, and then the next point is not balancing projects or skill improvement with job search. Yeah, so in the beginning, I spent way too much time just applying to tons of jobs. A lot of the jobs I didn't even meet the requirements for or the preferred qualifications. Right now, the job market for software engineers is so competitive that if you don't have any of the skills from the preferred requirements in your resume, then chances are you're not going to hear back from them. And that's been my experience. You gotta include almost all or all of them, of the preferred qualifications and the requirements in your resume. And you can tailor your resume to each job application that you do, but I wasn't balancing doing improving my skills by learning new things and developing projects. I wasn't committing to GitHub every day. I was just mass applying to jobs and spending all of my energy doing that. You need to have a balance. I would say 50-50. You need to spend And that's just a general rule of thumb for me. It's a suggestion. You don't have to do that. You can find what works for you, but make sure that you're working on both and on a daily basis during the week. Excuse me. Okay. And then the next thing is kind of related to the previous point, right? I slowed down job applications after getting interviews. So don't let yourself get cocky. I had like 5 interviews in my pipeline, and I was making it to final rounds for some of them. And I was like, well, why waste my time applying for jobs when I need to be preparing for these interviews? And I just went all out on preparing for the interviews. And I did well in the interviews, you know. I felt like I did really well. And I was surprised that I didn't hear back from them, but it's so competitive, guys. It's so competitive right now that you need to be prepared for the worst. And don't get your hopes up. Don't have any expectations that you're going to get the job, even if you feel good. Even if you feel like you're super qualified for it and you're the top applicant like I did. That's how I felt. I still didn't get the positions. And it's frustrating and it's hard, especially if you don't get feedback from these companies. But you have to keep your pipeline full. Think of yourself as like a salesman or a saleswoman, right? You are trying to keep your sales pipeline full of leads. And you want to keep on doing that no matter what until, and in this case, it's just we need to make a single sale and then we're done, right? It's not like actually being a salesperson. So go and apply to jobs until the very end, until you have an offer in writing, all right? Don't make the same mistake that I did. Now I'm spending a lot more time applying to jobs because I need to refill my pipeline. And another point is getting distracted with jobs that aren't good for career growth or outside of the industry, right? So if you're a software engineer and you got a major in computer science, and software engineer is really like truly in your heart what you want to do, what you think is going to be the best for your career, and is what your passion is, what you're interested in, then don't allow yourself to get distracted by job opportunities that aren't good for your career growth, whether that's something that is not going to align well with your goals or is something that's completely outside of the industry. Because it might be tempting with a job market that is as tough as it is right now with software engineering. Like, oh yeah, well maybe I could go into sales, or maybe I can, do IT, or whatever it is that you're thinking about pivoting to. If that's something that you truly want to do, then yeah, that's fine, of course. But if you're going through all this effort to prepare yourself as a software engineer, especially if you're going to graduate school, like for computer science, then stick to your goals, right? And stay strong. All right. So this leads me to my next slide. So let's go over some of the successes that I made, right? So the first point is making accomplishments and contributions at my internship that bring value to myself as a candidate. Okay, so this is really important. If you're at an internship or you're doing freelance or you're doing something, right? Make sure that you're having accomplishments, even if it's at a job that's not software related. You want to have some sort of accomplishments that you can hopefully quantify and put that on your resume. Like for example, I created some feature at my current internship for a user feed page, right? You put that on your internship. It shows that you're actually doing things that are tangible and that you can talk about during an interview. It's important for your resume and important for having something to talk about and sell yourself during an interview. All right, so having a mentor who helped with direction and resume. All right, so it's easy to kind of get in your own bubble and tunnel vision when you don't have anyone around you who's helping you or supporting you. It's not hard to find a mentor. And it doesn't need to be like a paid mentor or someone who's like calling you all the time. Have people. If you can't find a mentor, have people that you can at least talk to that are in the same boat as you, who are trying to do the same thing and maybe have succeeded or are just in the same situation as you. See what they're doing. See what technologies they're using or the failures they've had, the successes they've had. Talk with them. That's important. I've had a mentor who's helped me with direction about what I should be doing in terms of my job search and my projects, and it's been helpful. Even if it's just meeting once a week, try to do that. You need to be doing everything you can anyways. All right, so mass applying to jobs and embracing rejection because it means people are looking at my resume. Okay, so remember when I talked about how after I got interviews, I stopped applying to as many jobs. I didn't stop completely, but I was not applying to that many jobs, right? Well, I stopped getting like rejection emails, the automated rejection emails in my inbox. I'm sure you guys, if you're job hunting, you're familiar with those. Uh, and then when I started mass applying again recently, after failing those interviews, I started getting rejection letters in the automated rejection letters in my inbox again. And yeah, it sucks. It's disappointing. They don't even want to invite you for an interview, and that kind of sucks, especially if you spend a decent amount of time on the job application. However, I urge you to embrace those because the thing is if you're getting rejection, it means that people are going through your resume, and it means that you're applying to numbers of a lot of numbers of jobs, right? Because it's correlated with the amount of jobs that you apply to. The number of rejections is correlated to the amount of jobs that you're applying to, because you're not going to get interviews for every single job that you apply to, right? So the more rejections that you get, the more jobs that you're applying to, and that's a good thing because the job hunt is a game of numbers, and eventually, regardless of your skill set, if you meet the basic requirements for a software engineer, you have your degree, you have a couple projects, you're eventually going to get a job. You just have to keep applying to a high number of jobs, and it's just numbers from that point. Um, all right, and always asking for feedback and objectively analyzing it when I get it. Okay, so yeah, this is important. If you don't do well in an interview, they decide not to move forward with you. Even if you did well, it doesn't really matter. But if they decide not to move forward with you, always ask for feedback. A lot of companies have policies against giving feedback, and it's super frustrating, especially if you spent a decent amount of time preparing for that interview, and especially if they make you jump through hoops, taking IQ tests or all this different assessments and stuff just to get to the second round interview. It's a pain in the butt, but always ask for feedback. And if you're fortunate enough to get the feedback, then objectively analyze it. Even if it doesn't seem true to you or it bruises your ego a little bit, it's all right. Implement it as best as you can, because that could be the obstacle that's getting in your way of having a job. So analyze your feedback, take it very, very, very seriously. Okay, so another success, developing my skill set outside of what I've learned from WGU. Okay, this is important as well. So um, in WGU, I learned primarily Java. And it seems like it's the same for a lot of different university programs. For those of you who are watching my videos who didn't go to WGU, um, it's you learn some core object-oriented programming language like C or C++, Java, maybe Python, uh, and you don't get exposed to um, a lot of the different languages that are popular with software engineers in the industry, right? And a lot of these job postings now have a lot of high expectations because of the stiff competition. So you have to know more than one language. That's important, and know more than one language well. Um, and so I really just knew Java well from doing a lot of leak code problems in Java and from developing in Java for several projects in my university. And I would urge you to develop your language skills outside of, if it's Java or C Sharp or whatever it is that you know, and not just languages, but also databases, right? A lot of university programs or boot camps, they don't cover NoSQL databases. So maybe learn Amazon DynamoDB or MongoDB, a non-relational database. That's a good tool to put in your tool belt, right? Learn a new language. Python's really popular. If you don't know Python well, I suggest you learn Python. It's used at a lot of tech companies that are using modern stacks, right? So learn Python, learn a Python framework. Django or Flask is good. If you don't know JavaScript, it's probably important that you learn a modern web framework, right? So, like I mentioned, there's Django and Flask, which are good web frameworks, but you also want to know like Angular or React.js. I learned React.js from my internship. It's important. A lot of job descriptions list React.js, so I would definitely urge you to learn some sort of modern web framework, a new language, learn it well. Don't. I'm a very hands-on learner, so I have to make projects in order to kind of learn a language better. But I would suggest you use LeetCode to learn the language better. Also, exorcism.io. I believe it's .io. But exorcism, not like an exorcism, like you're getting a demon cast out of you, but like exorcism, like exercise. It's with an I at the end, so that's a good way to. It's a good website. It's a nonprofit for learning different coding languages, and they literally have every single language on there, like Fortran and stuff too. So like they have everything, and I would suggest learning the core part of the language so that you can be advanced and kind of show off your skill set in your projects, and show off in your project. That's what you want to do with employers. So definitely kind of go out of your comfort zone with that. I would also suggest learning cloud technologies, AWS or some sort of cloud platform. Um, and also, my next success is networking. So I go on LinkedIn. There's also my channel is a form of networking, right? And networking through my friends and my family, people who I know in person who are in the industry. It's important to have conversations with them, even if it's a connection that's not going to help you get a job or give you a referral, right? It's still good to hear from them and hear their experience. If I would never ever turn down a conversation with a software engineer or somebody who's already at an existing role, they can give you valuable advice, even if you don't think that you're going to learn anything from the conversation. Still, I would suggest that you talk to any software engineer that you can, because they're going to help you get a better idea of what you need to be doing to get a job. And my next success is striving to keep myself busy, taking care of myself through the roller coaster of emotions that is the job hunt. So, striving to keep myself busy, right? It's hard after you graduated to stay disciplined and keep yourself busy, especially if you're going to university in person, and then now you kind of have this unstructured schedule, and you have to take initiative and really work hard to job search. Um, for me, it wasn't as bad because I've done online school literally since high school, and through my university, I'm going to be doing it for grad school and stuff. So I've kind of built the habits necessary for self-discipline and really like keeping myself to a strict schedule. But I know that that's a challenge for a lot of people. Whether that's getting distracted by your phone, going on Twitter or YouTube, or whatever it is that gives you your dopamine rush. I would suggest, I would assert that if you're not keeping yourself busy, like if you find yourself having too much free time, like you're watching TV or playing video games or doing something for hours and hours a day, and you're not putting that much effort, just thinking that a job is going to come to you, don't do that. Don't do that. It's a mistake. Keep yourself as busy as possible. Have a sense of urgency. Feel like you're in a rush to get a job. And if you really want a job, then that's what you're going to do. Keep yourself working 8 hours a day at the minimum during the week. Take a day off. Take a day or two off. Take the weekends off if you want. Maybe work Saturdays, but definitely take Sunday off. Is just or what it doesn't have to be Sunday. For me, it's Sunday, but take a day off so you can rest from all the hard work that you're doing, but actually put in the hard work. And hard work doesn't mean sitting at your computer and then half of the time you're going on Twitter or YouTube or something. Hard work means actually doing projects, committing on GitHub, applying to jobs, networking, learning new things, actively doing something. That's keeping yourself busy. It's not a hybrid of uh, distracting yourself with things that aren't going to improve yourself. If you really want to get a job, then keep yourself busy. Stay disciplined. Build those habits. Build the good habits, and drop the bad habits. And taking care of yourself, that's important. Um, I know this kind of goes out of my domain of software and coding, but I feel like this is relevant to bring up for those of you who are looking for a job, because you're probably in a similar situation. And I found myself struggling with taking care of myself, especially because it's a roller coaster of emotions, getting rejected, having your hopes up, and then getting rejected. It sucks. It makes you not feel like you want to do anything, and you kind of get depressed. You pity yourself. It's not a fun place to be, right? So I would suggest taking care of yourself. What does that mean for me personally? Well, I work out. I work out like lifting weights and stuff and doing cardio. I mountain bike. That's something that I like to do. If you're near the beach, you can surf or go on a run or bike, whatever it is that you want to do. Maybe do that once or twice a week, and then lift weights, whatever it is, exercise. It doesn't really matter as long as you're exercising for at least a few times a week. Then that's really going to make a difference. And then eating right and getting enough sleep. You guys know the basic trifecta of self-care. So make sure that you're actually adhering to that, because if not, it's just going to make everything harder, and you're going to be more depressed and more unhappy with yourself, and it's not worth it. You got to put in the hard work. If you're comforting yourself and you're not struggling and getting out of your comfort zone, then that means you're not doing enough, and you're not going to get anywhere that you want to be without pushing yourself and making yourself uncomfortable. All right, so enough of that. So what I've done. All right, so I want to give you guys some specifics about what I've done in terms of like what I've learned and projects that I've done. Just so for those of you who are kind of lacking direction and wanna see maybe get some ideas or inspiration, then I'm going to talk about what I've done. Okay, so like I already mentioned, I learned Python, and I created a couple of Python projects. The Django Heroku project was what I made for my capstone class at WGU, and it's a restaurant management inventory program. Basically, you add ingredients, and ingredients is like a model class, right? And then with those ingredients, you can make recipes, and there's basically like a recipe book, and then there's a purchase log, and you can submit purchases, and then it automatically deducts it from the ingredients inventory. And since the recipes might have different units, then there's unit conversions, and this is in a web app made with Django. And there's also like user authentication using Django Forms and the built-in user model. And it's a decent project. It's pretty basic user interface. There's definitely some improvements that I want to make. I have like an insights page I use a third-party library for charts. So I want to keep working on that project. I haven't touched it in a little while. I deployed it on Heroku because at the time Heroku was kind of the easiest option for me. You can have like a Git repository that you make, and then it automatically like deploys to Heroku once you push the changes. So that's pretty nice, and Heroku's not too expensive. So if you're first time and you haven't used like any cloud platform, then I would recommend Heroku. And another project that I just recently did that I'm still working on is a Flask web app. And Flask, like I already mentioned, is a Python web framework. And basically what this application is it's like a platform for financial calculators. So there's a calculators for options pricing using the Black-Scholes model, and also a portfolio risk analysis calculator. And it uses libraries like pandas and NumPy, which are popular with like finance companies and banks. I was applying to a few of them. That's why I did this project. And they use that to manipulate big data. So I use those projects to show that I have a little bit of knowledge and demonstrate that. And I also used a Yahoo Finance API to show it's an API that retrieves past financial data about different stocks. So it was used for my portfolio risk analysis calculator. And then I also used Google OAuth API for user authentication, so you can log in with your Google account. I thought that was a little neat feature that I could add to it. And let's see what else I did. So it's pretty basic. You can do the calculations, and then you can see all of your previous calculations in your account. And I basically, so what I did is I containerized it using Docker. I used Gunicorn as my web server, and then I pushed that to AWS ECR, Elastic Container Registry. And then from there, I deployed it onto AWS App Runner. So for those of you who don't know what AWS is, it's Amazon Web Services, and it's basically like a suite of different services that you can use to deploy applications on the cloud. Yeah, I did that. I also am. It's currently kind of a work in progress. I have API routes for my calculator, like REST APIs. So basically, I'm going to make like a third-party app, maybe with like React.js or something, something simple that's going to consume the API that's hosted on AWS, and my application, my financial calculator application, is going to consume that API, and then it's going to have some sort of business insight or something like a graph, or I don't know, something that manipulates the data from the calculations, right? Just to kind of demonstrate my knowledge of client server architecture and cloud development, right? So that's kind of leads me to my next point about like getting my feet wet in DevOps and cloud. A lot of companies are looking for that. They have like Docker or Kubernetes or AWS or Azure in their requirements or preferred qualifications. And that's something that is important that you at least kind of like are familiar with. A lot of people who are applying to these jobs are going to have that in their resume. So make a project with using those tools and put it on your resume. And there you go. Now you know the project. At least get your feet wet. If you don't have some sort of experience implementing or designing a REST API, that's going to put you at a disadvantage when you're applying to a majority of the software engineer jobs. They want you to use REST APIs. If you don't know what that is, I can go over that in another video, or you can Google it. It's pretty simple concept to understand. Like I said, client-server architecture, microservices. If you're not familiar with any of those terms, do your research. It's important that you know them as a software engineer. All right, something else that I did was like a mini blockchain project with React.js and Solidity. Solidity is like an object-oriented programming language. Think like Java or C# or something like that. It's like that, and it's used for blockchain for creating smart contracts in the Ethereum network. So that's basically what I did. It's like a smart contract, and it's like a voting platform where you can like submit votes. And it's like super simple React.js app. The UI is like embarrassingly simple, but I just did it because I wanted to kind of get my feet wet with blockchain and like kind of understand more about smart contracts. And if that's something that you're interested in, I would definitely suggest looking into that. You can see all my projects on my GitHub. I can link that in the description. So if you kind of want to get like a better idea of my projects, then go ahead and look at my GitHub. And so yeah, I learned React.js in Google Firebase for my internship. And for those of you who don't know what Google Firebase is, it's basically like a backend as a service. Basically, you can make like backend functions and store data in a non-relational database, like in JSON format. inside of Firebase, and you can do a bunch of stuff with it. So I learned that from my internship. I haven't really seen that as common as like, sorry guys, I'm thirsty. I haven't really seen that as common in job descriptions as other technologies, but it's something that's part of my internship, so I didn't really have an option like in using it. It wasn't my choice, but it's still nonetheless useful to know. I mean, it's going to be a tool that you're definitely going to see in some job descriptions. And React.js, of course, that was great experience because I'm using a modern web framework, and that's invaluable. If you don't know React.js, I would suggest that you learn it. It's not too hard. Just watch a tutorial of Free Code Camp or W3 Schools or something like that. And also, I've learned what it's like to be a part of a team developing software, right? So my current internship, we have weekly stand-up meetings, and it's with the Scrum methodology, right? So there's Scrum meetings. So we do like sprints, and it's like an agile environment. And for those of you who aren't familiar with software development methodologies and the software development lifecycle, I would recommend that you 100% learn that. It's very, very important. Most companies are going to be using Agile or Scrum. Some companies use the waterfall methodology or iterative methodology for developing software. So definitely look into that if you're not familiar with what that is. Most of you probably are if you went and got your degree in computer science or related information technology, whatever it is. They probably went over that. But it's important that you know, right? And next, what I want to do. So I want to make my GitHub activity page a sea of green, right? So it shows publicly how many commits you're doing every day on GitHub. What I want to do is just have my GitHub activity a sea of green. It's pretty straightforward. I want to commit every day, at least during the week, right? And I had feedback from a previous interview. The same guy who gave me the feedback about my project, he said that there wasn't enough activity on my GitHub. This isn't something that's major, right? Because not everyone uses GitHub, and not everyone uses version control for some of their projects. Like my GitHub would be more active if I used version control for all the projects that I did in university, but I didn't, right? So it doesn't show my activity for those projects. If it did, my activity would be a lot more. And that was kind of something that I was a little bit frustrated with the interviewer for, because it's not really like a valid feedback, not everyone uses GitHub, but still nonetheless, it looks good if you have a sea of green on GitHub, because then it's one way of demonstrating that you're passionate about your projects and you're going in and you're working on them and you're actually developing software. This is especially important if you don't have an internship or a job already as a software engineer. All right. And what else I want to do is implement advanced features into my projects. I want to kind of dabble with artificial intelligence, specifically with implementing an OpenAI API. For those of you who don't know OpenAI, I think ChatGPT, right? I want to implement an API into one of my programs, maybe my restaurant management inventory tracker program. So we'll see. That's going to be on my priority list soon. And then obviously I want to get a full-time entry-level position. I just felt like I had to put that down under what I want to do because, that's kind of what we're aiming here for, guys. So, and then learn as much as possible in my graduate degree program. If you guys have just graduated from school and you're not going to be doing graduate school, I would suggest that you maybe look into getting some certifications or something. Something that demonstrate that you're continually learning and you're doing something. So look into certifications or look into applying to grad school if that's something that interests you. All right, so to conclude and finally wrap up, try your best to get real world experience, even if it's unpaid. Still apply to unpaid internships. They're easier to get into. Get your foot in the door somewhere and get an unpaid internship. You're there for a few months and then you can get a paid opportunity. If you're not filling your schedule, you're not doing enough, and push yourself, right? We already had our pep talk earlier, so you guys get the point. Job hunt is a game of numbers. Keep applying and you're eventually going to get one. Learn new relevant skills. Go outside of your comfort zone. Push yourself with your projects. Make something that's advanced. Make something that's impressive, right? focus on the meat and bones, like the meat and potatoes of your code, not as so much the user experience. Unless you're going in the front end or UI or something like that, people don't really care as much about the user experience and the user interface. And user experience is more important than the user interface in my opinion for these portfolio projects, but I've heard from several interviews that they don't really care about like how fancy my user interface is. So don't get wrapped up spending a bunch of time or wasting your time making a pretty user interface with CSS and HTML and stuff. It doesn't matter as much, especially if you're going into like backend or you're being a full stack engineer. Just make something that's usable, right, and basic, and focus on the functionality of your code. And connect with other people in your situation and see what they're doing. I already talked about that. That's important. Go on LinkedIn, build your account, build your network, get more connections, and also just take care of yourself, right? Remember the trifecta: exercise, diet, and sleep. Make sure that you're doing all three of those, and you're going to take care of yourself during this hard time of searching for a job. All right, so I know that was kind of a lot, guys. If you watched this video through the end, I hope that you found it insightful and helpful, and that there was like at least one thing that really clicked with you. You're like, oh wow, I need to be doing this, or this is where I'm going to take initiative. So I hope that I maybe inspired a few of you guys to do better with your job search. And this is just a continuous thing. It's a practice. You have to keep pushing yourself. So especially for those of you who found this helpful, please like my video and subscribe for more related content. I'm here to help you guys. I'm here to build, to make more content that you guys find useful and enjoyable. So if you did, just share the love, subscribe or like the video. And if you have any feedback or suggestions, please leave a comment. If there's something that you want to see in particular, like maybe if there's like one of those projects that I did interests you more and you're kind of confused about it on my GitHub, and you want to learn more about it, I can maybe possibly make a video of demonstrating my project. Leave a suggestion if that's something that you want to see in the comment section, or just leave any sort of comment with a suggestion for another video. I'm open to any ideas. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.